Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I appreciate you guys being here. I know it's been a little bit since I've posted a video, but I am back. My last 5 videos, I think, have been about Home Assistant, which is great. I have nothing wrong with Home Assistant, but I wanted to go ahead and make a Linux kind of styled video. This Linux video isn't going to be specifically Linux. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Vim. And kind of like getting started with Vim, so that way I could make a few more videos about Vim going forward. There's so much to learn about Vim. I don't know everything about it, and I probably won't ever know everything about Vim, but I do know quite a bit with Vim, and I'm constantly trying to get better with it. And a lot of people out there seem to want to know Vim, and I understand why. It's pretty much the most common text editor among Linux servers and computers. In most Linux distributions, it's installed by default, and if you're in a terminal window, something without a GUI, Vim might be one of the few options you have to actually manage text files. So that's what this video is going to be about, so stick around. Before we jump over to the terminal window here, I just want to say a huge thanks to the 64 subscribers that this channel has received. That's insane to me. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you guys subscribing to the channel and sticking around. If you liked the video, definitely hit that like button to help other people find these videos. I think a lot more people would be interested in learning Vim and home automation, so you hitting that like button will definitely help those people find this video. If not, thanks for watching either way. So let's go ahead, let's jump right into it. So I just have my standalone terminal window here. There's nothing fancy about it. I could type ls, I'm gonna see my files, but there's nothing too crazy here. Alright, so Vim, it's just spelled V-I-M like that. It's important to know that there's Vim and then there's also VI. So VI is what's typically installed on Linux servers and stuff like that, and Vim is typically going to be on like Ubuntu, CentOS. But here's the thing, they're basically the same program. I mean, in essence, they're not. So VI is a text editor that's Vim is based off of. It's very simple as far as the fact that it doesn't do color coding. You can't install any plugins to it and stuff like that. Vim is just the advanced version of VI, and even as we go to launch that, we'll see Vim, VI improved. So right there, and that's actually where they get Vim from. VIM, Vim. So Vim is just VI improved, and that's not something you necessarily need to know when you first get started learning Vim. It's just something to keep in mind in the future. If you happen to open up Vim or VI on a server somewhere, you might not have access to Vim. You might be just in VI. But let's go ahead and start with the basics. So to go ahead and launch Vim, you just type in Vim, and then you could also put in the name of a file here, and if you hit enter, it's going to say name of the file.txt, new file. And so just by you providing that file name, it's going to go ahead and create one for you. Let's go ahead and say, we'll just go back, we'll go into a lot of the stuff here in a second, but now that we've done that, if we were to run vim name of a file.txt again, now it's opening up, but you can see down here it's not a new file. It just opened up that previous file we had. So if you say vim and then the name of the file, it's going to open up a file or create that file for you. Let's go ahead and just remove that file. But let's go back into Vim. So the biggest thing people ask when they get into or try to use VI or Vim is, how do I get out of my terminal? And this is something I experienced the first time I launched it. I actually had to ask my boss at the time, All right, so I got into it, but how do I get out of it? And so to exit out of Vim, you're going to type in a colon, and if you keep an I down here, you can see when I type in a colon, it shows it right there, and then I could actually just type whatever I want right here. And this is how you're going to call a command. And so if we just type in Q, that's going to be our command to quit. And if we hit, oh, and it even shows it right here, type colon Q, enter to exit. Hey guys, I'm coming back in after I recorded the video you're currently watching, but I showed you how to get out of the file with colon Q, but that was basically all I showed you how to do. I didn't show you any other way to get out of the file. If you do a colon W, and I'll probably put a little screen capture up here, if you do a colon W, it's going to go ahead and write that file. And so if you do colon W, it's going to write the file but not close out of it. You can do a colon WQ to write and quit the file at the same time. And you could do a colon Q exclamation point if you've modified the file and you want to quit it, but you don't want to save those changes. And that's important because if you're in Vim, there's so many commands, it's easy to make a mistake. If you make a mistake, no big deal, just do the colon Q exclamation point to get out of the file without actually saving those changes to the file. And that's how you're going to save files you're working on. I was just so excited to get into the other topics I talked about that I kind of forgot to go over that, but if you're just getting started with Vim, those are going to be things you're going to have to know to actually save the files you're working on and get out of them without saving your changes. And we can see it exits. But when we go ahead and we add some stuff here, and to get into insert mode, all I had to do was press I on the keyboard. So if I go back here, hit escape, this is how you first load up Vim. There's nothing in this file. We have our cursor at the very first spot on the file, and if you tap the character I on your keyboard, it's going to put you in insert. Before you get too far into it, you just need to know that's a lowercase I, and from here you could just type. And we're going to even press enter and say this is a new line, and great. But let's say, you know what, I don't want the top line to say testing, testing, testing. So how do I get back up there? Well, you have two options. If you don't want to get out of insert mode, you can use your arrow keys to go ahead and move around, and you can see that cursor. That cursor is just going to show you where you're at. So wherever that cursor is, and you go to change something, it's always going to change the spot before it. So let's see if this shows up any different. So this solid green right here, that's actually where my mouse is at. The cursor's in the space right behind it. And so if I were to go here and hit backspace, you see I don't actually delete the T, I delete the space between the two versions of testing. But yeah, you just use the cursor to move around, go up and down, and there you go. But if you're actually out of insert mode, so right now we're in insert mode, and to get out of it, all we do is press escape. So if you're not in insert mode, the arrow keys still work to get around without any problems, but you now have this new option where you can use H, J, K, and L to move around, and so it works the same way. I know I don't have anything showing my keys that I'm pressing here, but let's go ahead and go back into insert mode. We'll add a few more lines here, and we'll say up, down, left, and right. And so using H, J, K, and L, we could still navigate without moving our hand off the keyboard, which is what most people in Vim like to do. So if you press H, you're going to go to the left, and so we're just going to go over to here, and we're just going to add an H just like that. We'll go out of insert mode, and to go right, you're going to use L. And to go down, you use, and to go down, you use J. And then to go up, use K. Okay, so we have up, down, left, and right. And that's kind of how you're going to move around just using the bare bones keys. Again, press I to start inserting. This is kind of interesting for beginners because they'll not realize they're in insert mode and they'll go to try to move down or up and start typing. So that's just something you got to be aware of. But keeping this in mind could help you out depending on the situation you're in, or if you're just trying to keep your hands on the keys as much as possible. So that's basic navigation for as far as moving your cursor around. Obviously there's stuff like how do I move from the top of the file to the bottom of the file, which is pretty common, especially if you're modifying configuration files. And so we're at the top of the line here. If we just hit uppercase G, it's going to take us to the first character of the bottom line at the very beginning of the bottom line. So that's an uppercase G. To get to the top of the file, if you press GG lowercase g's, so 2 lowercase g's will take you to the top of the file. Here, we'll go ahead and we'll keep track of what we've talked about here. So uppercase G will take you to the bottom of the file, and 2 lowercase g's will take you to the top. And so you can use K to go up, J to go down, H to go left, and L to go right, uppercase G to get to the bottom, and GG to get back up to the top. So this is going to be our basic navigation here. We can also use, let's say we're at the very beginning of this line and we know we want to go to the end of the line because I didn't add a period or something crazy like that. We could go ahead and press $. $sign will take us to the very end of a line. And so now that we're at the end of the line, I could go to insert and add my period just like that. And so we'll go ahead and we'll add $sign here. Okay, and I've added that here. And now that I've at the end of this line, what if I want to go to the beginning of this line? I could just hit 0. 0 will take me to the beginning of a line. Okay. And while I was doing that, you probably noticed something. So I went into insert mode, but I didn't press I to do it. And when I did that, it actually added in a new line. So let's go ahead. Let's add a few more lines here. And what you call this? Commands, or let's say insert commands, because they're all technically commands. And so obviously we have a lowercase I, and this is just going to put us into insert mode. But if you type a O, I put an O here instead of a 0. There we go. And so if you just type O on your keyboard, and so when you press O, like right now we're currently, let's move a line up here. If we're on this line and I go, maybe I wanted to add something between I and O, which I do actually. If I hit O, it's going to add a line here and put me in insert mode so I could just go ahead and start typing. And so O is pretty popular. And what we're going to do is we'll add another one here, which is going to be an uppercase O. And then this is going to, and I specify it adds a new line below where your cursor is for a reason here. I put you into insert mode without moving where you are. Uppercase O, like if I was here and I hit uppercase O, it's going to push that line I was currently on down and add a new line here. And a lowercase o like this is just going to push or add a new line beneath this one and put me into insert mode. While we're talking about insert commands, there's also I went ahead and changed this line to call it insert mode to the right of the cursor. So what that means is I'm here at the end of the line here. And right now, as you can see, I can't go any further than the R. My cursor is already on the R, but if I go into insert mode to add a period here, oh, I'm pushing that over because, as we talked about earlier, your cursor sits right before the character you're editing or modifying. And so let's get out of that. If we press A, it's going to move our insert mode just to the right of where the cursor is at. So right here, I can't go any farther to the right, but if I press A, it's going to move my cursor over and put me into insert mode, so then I can add that period. So they're both insert commands. I will give you access to wherever you are. A is going to give you insert mode just one spot over to the right. Uppercase O is going to add a new line to wherever your cursor currently is at. O is going to add a new line right below where your cursor is at. And so, as we can see, as we start to combine these, we could really start to modify the file like we have done thus far. And let's go ahead and we've done a whole bunch of stuff here, but not all of it is good. Like we have these testing lines, we have this is a new line, like we don't want all that here. And so we could actually start to remove this line. If you press D, lowercase d, twice on your keyboard, so the first time you press D, you can see come over here. This is delete mode, and there's a few things we can do with delete mode. If you just press D twice, it's going to just delete the line you're on, and we could go ahead and do that again to remove that spot at the top. But if you go ahead and combine D with one of our navigations, so either up, down, left, or right, actually just up or down now that I think about it, unless you're in a different mode. If you press D and either go up or down, it's going to take the line you're currently on and the line you're either going to and remove those as well. So if on this line, if I were to do a D to go into delete mode and a J to delete it, it's going to remove this line and this line here. And so if I do that, D, J, it removed both those lines out of my file. And we're going to go ahead and press a lowercase o to add a new line here. And we'll go ahead and add okay, so we got both of those added to our sheet here. But on top of just being able to remove the lines either up or down, let's go ahead and go back into our insert mode on a new line here. So lowercase o, let's just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and we'll go ahead and move our cursor up here. And I don't want these lines here, and I want to delete them. But let's say I only want to delete 1 through 3. And I didn't want to go DD down or D down, D down, D down, and finally get to where I was going. You can specify the number of lines you'd like to delete with your D command. And so if we go D, down here we see we have the D option enabled. We can say how many lines we want to go down from where we are. So we could say D3, and then if we say J to go down, we can see we removed technically 4 lines because it removed the line we were currently on. And so just like that, and we can go ahead and remove both those lines. So we can say D plus, D, and we'll say 1 through, and this could be whatever number you want in theory. You don't have to use 1 through 9. You could use 55, 500. So D number Okay, so that's how you're going to be deleting lines. Um, let's go ahead and talk about something that most people don't learn about Vim, but I think it's hugely important. And that's going to be the copy and paste functionality of Vim. So if you're using any sort of I had to think about the spelling there while I was typing and talking, but if you've used any sort of text editor, you know copying and pasting could be a huge part of what you're doing, and Vim has a lot of that same functionality. But in this case, it's called yanking the line, and it's still called pasting. And so, as you can see here, we've kind of set a trend on how this page looks. We have the command, we have the arrow, and then we define, give it a little description of what that is. Let's say I wanted to go ahead and copy this line right here, and so that way I can use it in our copy and paste section down below. If I were to tap Y, and again you can see that we're in yank mode, Y twice, it's going to yank that entire line, and if I put P to paste it, it's going to move that here, and then I could just modify this line. So I could go into insert mode and say YY, and we could go ahead and remove these here. And I said yanks the current line that you are on because that's what it's referred to in Vim, but really you're just copying the line that you are on, and then you would use just P. Okay, and so this is going to be a very high level explanation of how to paste something. So if you do P, it's gonna, if you do a double Y yank to yank the entire line that you're on, and you press P, it's gonna yank the contents of that yank below where your cursor is. And that's not technically right because you can actually yank single words or entire paragraphs, and then start pasting them and moving them around inside of Vim. But just to get us started, if you hit lowercase p when you have a yanked line, it's going to paste it below the line you're currently at. So you could kind of think of it as our little O, where it adds the new line below where your cursor is. It's just going to paste that yanked line below where you currently are. And then just like our O commands here, if we do an uppercase P, it's gonna paste the contents of the yank on the current line. And when you do that, just like uppercase O, it's gonna push the line you're currently on down. And so if I do a, let's go ahead and just copy this one so we know which one we've copied for sure. So double Y, come down here to this line. If we do an uppercase P, you can see it puts it on the same line where my cursor was and pushes the rest of my content. And with that, guys, I think I'm going to go ahead and end the video there. My camera actually stopped recording there, so sorry if it was a bit of a cutoff. I guess I hit the timeout recording on it because for some reason it doesn't have unlimited recording on it. And so I think that's a good place to stop anyways. We went over the basics of kind of moving around and start using Vim. Expect another video on Vim here soon to go ahead and show you guys how to do more stuff. I know there was a lot of information here. It was probably a little bit dense. Feel free to test this out on your own computer. If you have a Linux computer, you should be well set off as far as getting into Vim. If you're on a Mac computer, it's not too hard to get into Vim either. Last time I checked, it was installed by default. If not, you can just go ahead and install it with Homebrew. If you're using a Linux computer and Mac computer, out of the box you should be good to go. On a Windows computer though, you're going to have a little bit more of a problem accessing it. But you can use the Linux subsystem on Windows to go ahead and access Ubuntu or one of the other ones they have there and get into Vim there, or you can download a little Vim client and start editing files like that. It's not the route I would go personally, but it is there if you want to start learning the basics of Vim, which is going to really help you out if you do plan on doing anything with Linux administration, servers, or anything like that. I appreciate you guys so much for sticking around and watching the video. If you have any comments, feedback, or suggestions, definitely let me know down below. If you liked this video, please hit that like button. I would really appreciate it. If you like this type of video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be, like I said, releasing more Vim content here soon, but I do plan on releasing more Linux content, and a lot of my content will probably be also focused around Home Assistant. So expect another Home Assistant video here in the near future. So if this is the type of content you like, stick around and I would really appreciate it. As always, guys, thanks so much for giving me your time.